Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Winning Stories from the Field. Learn top tips to managing the paperwork in your business. I'm Teresa Resick, Director of Webinars here at AIIM, and AIIM is your host and producer of today's event. In our webinar today, we'll have a slightly different format. We'll have a focused 30-minute discussion between AIIM's Chief Analyst Bob Larrabee and Steve Talmud from CVision Technologies. CVision is the underwriter of today's webinar, and we thank them for their support. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. And before we get started, let me just give you a few pointers for viewing today's webinar. Since this is a 30-minute webcast, we'll not have dedicated Q&A time at the end of the talk. But as always, you can use the Q&A feature if you're having any technical difficulties to let us know. By joining our webinars live, you can customize your own viewing experience, so feel free to open or close or even resize the different windows. And across the bottom of your screen is a list of all the widgets that are available to you. You can download a PDF of the presentation at any time. Just look to the resources list, and that's located on the right side of the slide area. And there are also a number of case studies and other really great resource links in there to help you learn more about today's topic. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to AIIM.org's Resources Webinars page in just a few days. Do you want to introduce our featured speakers today? Bob Larrabee is the Vice President and Chief Analyst of Market Intelligence at AIIM. Bob is an expert in the application of advanced technologies and process improvement to solve business problems and enhance business operations. With over 30 years of industry experience, including product management, R&D, marketing, sales, and education, his passion is to share his knowledge and experience with organizations seeking to improve their operations, embracing technology, and drive the business forward. And we also have with us Steve Talmud, and Steve is the Vice President of Major Accounts at CVision Technologies. And since joining 15 years ago, Steve has worked on numerous projects, process automation projects, including helping a major university perform college transcript reviews 12 times faster and helping a bank process more than 1 billion images in a single year. He enjoys spending time with his far-flung family and performing improv. So now I'm going to turn things over to Bob Larrabee to begin our discussion today. Bob?
Well, thank you, Teresa. It's great to be here, and I thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. And, of course, thanks to Steve and the folks at CVision for underwriting this and helping us to bring this informational session to the community. And, you know, one of the things that you mentioned, Teresa, is my role is head of research at AIIM, and I get the opportunity to not only conduct surveys, which if any of you out there have ever answered one, I certainly do thank you for that, but I get a lot of opportunities to travel around the globe and talk to folks. And, you know, one of the things that I like to discuss is things like operational challenges. And I found over the years that the challenges are very similar across organizations. You know, it doesn't matter if it's a trucking company or insurance company, banking companies. They all have similar problems, even though they're different. From a business perspective, some of the challenges are the same. So some of those, the top three that I keep hearing. Long processing times. It takes us way too long to process things like applications, for example. And, you know, we're all familiar with things like applications, loan applications and mortgage applications, credit card applications, and things along those lines. Also, delayed response times. That when somebody's looking for information, a customer, for example, comes to them and says, hey, I'd like to find out about my account, or I'd like to check on this. Delayed response times. They can't turn things around fast enough. And part of that is due to poor accessibility and sharing capabilities within the organization. You know, it's all too often there are a lot of information silos across an enterprise. And so you have pockets of information here and there, and not a simple way or easy way, I guess, is what I hear, to share this information, to get at it and to share it. And so it's kind of ad hoc. And, you know, one of the things that I also hear, and we found this in our recent survey, I know this is a shameless plug, but our process improvement and automation survey in 2016 was from an operational standpoint, 58% of our respondents said their biggest business problem is things getting stuck in a process. And so, here you go, you're trying to get through a review and approval process or some type of cycle, and it just stalls. One of the reasons that we're hearing for this is because of this accessibility and sharing piece. In a lot of cases, we hear that it's because there's some paper involved. And there's now this challenge of we've got the paper, but how do we get it into that process? How do we get it moving along? The other thing, when we look at things like application processing, and I want to dive into this a little bit, because I hear that there's this huge struggle to scale, right? There's outdated methods of processing these documents. Typically, it's manual processes that are being used. So we're dependent on the paper moving through the organization. We're dependent on these pieces of paper that we must review, and a lot of times this is done in linear fashion. It goes from one person to the next person. There's an inability to prioritize high priority applications. We want to get these business things taken care of right away. There's a high priority on this, but we can't identify which ones they are. And so this gets back to some more research that I and my team did this year in the state of the industry earlier this year, is that it takes too long to find content. 62% of the folks that we talked with said that. And 52% said there's a lot of duplicative efforts throughout their organization. So, there's all this time spent looking for information, all this duplicate effort to deal with this information. And so at this point, Steve, I'd like to get your view on this. What have you seen in your customer base in relation to these types of challenges and these issues? And how are organizations that you're working with addressing these issues today?
Thanks, Bob. So, I think there are a lot of organizations, even now in 2016, that are still dealing with paper. There are forms that get filled out. There are all types of invoices and mortgage applications and manufacturing documents and forms that sit on people's desks, waiting for them to be entered into a database, waiting to be put into some kind of a spreadsheet, moving along to another desk for a further approval. And the idea that organizations are relying on a piece of paper which can't readily be found, which has to manually be processed, which has human error all along the process, it's still happening today, but more and more companies are beginning to use software to automatically identify these document types, extract the information from them, validate them, put these documents in a repository where they can be shared and archived to meet compliance requirements. And so we're seeing lots of companies and lots of markets, healthcare companies, financial institutions, tax and accounting customers, manufacturing, that are now using automation to alleviate some of the labor-intensive and some of the inefficiencies around these documents. So I really just want to spend a slide here on just talking about mortgage applications, because that's one of the more complex applications where our software is being used and where technology like this is being used, really as kind of an illustration for how challenges like these are being met. But it really applies to various vertical markets, not just mortgage applications. So
and many of us have had to go through that process.
Absolutely. Thanks. Yeah.
Yep.
So there are various ways the customers want to use our software around mortgages. There's companies that originate mortgages, and for them the primary driver is speed. They want to be able to quickly respond to an application, make a decision, and get that business. And then there's B2B customers. These are banks who buy mortgages in bulk and need to go through them and reassemble and extract certain bits of information that weren't acquired when they bought these mortgages from another institution. So I'll just talk about the origination side, because I think that's probably more applicable to most of the audience today. And so we recently completed a project with a company which it took them 2 hours to process a mortgage document, and they needed to get that down. Their goal was 20 minutes. By using software to automatically classify the different document types, extract the information, validate it against an external source, our software got typical 300-page application done in 3.5 minutes, so that's under 5 minutes, as it says on the slide. And the only thing that needed manual intervention were those documents that were problematic. So documents that didn't meet a predefined rule, came back, with poor image quality, so the software couldn't automatically pull off the information that it needed to. So they were able to meet a tremendous time objective and a really aggressive objective that they had set for themselves, and that allowed them to be more responsive to their customers. It also helped them in an entire kind of large amount of documents or applications, pull out the most important ones that needed the most immediate processing and prioritize those, which was a further business benefit. When a human is entering data off of documents, there's typically a 2 to 3% error rate. When software does it on a field that can be externally validated, it gets more like 99%. And what I mean by that is if we're pulling a name off of an application, it can be OCR'd accurately or not, but if we can then take that name and match it against an address or an application number or social security number, and you have this two-way matching, the accuracy rates go up to 99%. And that can be done in a lot of fields in a document, and the most important one. So the customer benefited by seeing improved accuracy rates, identifying the type of document that it was seeing. So in a mortgage application, there are title reports, there are appraisals, there are credit reports, deeds, insurance forms, HUD forms. Our software and software like this is able to accurately identify the type of document it's looking at with 99.5% accuracy, which means only 5 per 1,000 are problematic. So that's an important benefit, and what it means is that it allows customers to take a bevy of documents, 300 of them, all coming in from in different orders because no one knows how they scanned it, and putting it into a particular format in a particular order that makes the entire process much easier to manage down the road. So automatic document assembly is one of the other benefits of using software like this. And the fact that it all gets integrated into the customer's ERP system or his other document management system means that it works within their existing workflow. There's no modifications that are necessary. So by using software like this, customers are realizing they can save on labor, they can improve the accuracy of the output, and they can speed up their response time on applications and in their main business process.
Cool. And by OCR, I mean, we're talking about optical character recognition in this particular case, right? So the use of that to do data extraction. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another
the
thing.
Idea of taking.
Go ahead.
I was just going to explain what OCR was briefly, in case people didn't understand. It's a notion of taking a scanned document or a faxed document, which is really just pixels on a page and is unreadable by a machine, and turning it into text that can be copied and pasted and searched on. And that's what OCR is, and that's the underlying technology that all of this software is using.
And that's a great segue to another topic that I run into all the time and that many of us are familiar with is invoice processing. I mean, this is a very labor-intensive type of activity, and it gets into the whole idea of keying in information, right, where we're trying to grab that information, we're trying to key it into the database at some point. And, of course, invoices are coming at us from all different directions, multi-channel. We could be getting them by email, by fax. We could get them by paper mail. It's going to hit us in many different ways. And there's increasing volumes of invoices, and this can be really overwhelming for an accounting department, especially when we talk about things like, grabbing that data and leveraging that data, or reading the data, if you will, using the OCR technology. So, 58% of the folks that I've had the opportunity to talk with and responded to our State of the Industry report said that their inbound handling is really, pretty much ad hoc. They don't really see it as structured. So, again, I'll call on you for this one. What have you seen in your customer base? What are some of the things that you're seeing in the ways people are dealing with this?
Thanks. So probably one of the prevalent areas that customers are using this type of solution in is an automated processing for their AP department. So again, we recently did a project where a customer was processing, they had 3 employees processing about 30 invoices per hour each. Their accuracy rate was 97%. And if I can ask you to just click ahead just a bit, Bob. By using an automated solution, they were able to, previous slide, just advance the animation.
All
So by using automated software, what they were able to do is go from 3 humans to 1. The overall image processing was, they went from 90 per hour across 3 humans to 100 per hour. And the accuracy rate went from 97% to 99%. And software like this is really not just for accounts payable departments. The software is also valid for tax and accounting firms who are trying to do look-back audits. They want to figure out the amount of taxes that were paid to a particular jurisdiction so they can apply for a refund, let's say, or contract analysis and adherence, make sure that a vendor is giving them the discounts that they're entitled to, or negotiating future discounts based on volumes of business they're doing with particular vendors. And we also have customers of ours that offer this as a BPO service to their customers. Typically, they use cheap labor overseas to do the data extraction and do the invoice processing. What they're finding is by applying software to do most of the work, they're able to minimize the amount of labor they need overseas and improve the speed and accuracy that they're delivering to their customers. So, for a generic AP department, what they're seeing as an immediate ROI is their staff is able to focus on more important tasks than just doing heads-down data entry. They're able to identify invoices instantly because after the invoices are processed, the images and the metadata associated with those invoices, they all go into their ERP system for easy access and easy sharing. They can leverage early payment discounts because these invoices are getting processed quickly, and they can prioritize the payment of those. For the IT department, they're seeing that it integrates easily with whatever existing system they have. Typically, software like this will output in the data in CSV or XML format, which is a generic format that works in almost all ERP or database systems. And documents are preserved. IT departments care about this, so there are issues where they need to retain documents for 7, and in some cases, like mortgages, 37 years documents have to be retained. So that becomes a challenge in a lot of cases as well. 37 years is several lifetimes in the technology world. For management, they're seeing an immediate ROI. They're seeing their costs go down, and they're able to grow their capacity without hiring. So those are all
by ROI, by ROI, you're talking about the return on investment here. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So that's basically calculating the investment they make and how quickly they see a payback on that investment.
Okay.
Right.
So sorry to interrupt, but so actually I want to take one step back because I do have a question for you. I love this idea of transparency into process. Could you explain to me a little bit about what you're seeing in relation to that? Because when I talk to like the C-level executives and I talk to management teams, this is one of the things that I keep hearing them say is they want greater transparency into the process.
So that's interesting. We're in the middle of a project with a manufacturing company, a pharmaceutical company, and so they have an entire process where they manufacture individual components for drugs. So these are components that they then resell to other manufacturers to become an active ingredient within a drug. And there are typically 40-page forms that need to be checked off and filled out that talk about the pH levels of certain solvents and the temperature of other processes and the signature associated with every step along the way. So there's a tracking system to make sure that it meets the quality requirements that are required in order to put a drug on the market. And batch after batch, this needs to be calculated. The current process is this 40-page form moves on paper from a desk to another desk. And because these forms are fairly complex and there's so much human error, sometimes it takes until it gets to the third desk before they realize, wait, we can't release this batch. We're missing a signature, or a level wasn't tested properly, or is unacceptable for our QA. And so there are lots of situations where everything has to stop. There's a delivery that has to get made. No one's approved this document that is the log of the entire process. And so they need to find out where it exists, which means Whose desk is it at? Is the person in today, or is he on vacation or visiting the dentist? Can we break into his drawer to pull out the form to get it expedited? And this is really happening today in a company's probably doing $500 million in business a year, and they're working on paper like this, and that's their process. So deliveries get late, or they get made and they shouldn't have been. There's a real cost to this, and the idea that now this can be automated, this can be shared on the web, everyone knows where it is, everyone can view it, problems get picked up immediately instead of waiting several days for it to go from desk to desk to desk. That's a huge benefit that management sees that really improves their process and makes them more competitive. It's a huge inefficiency in 2016, but it's really happening.
Well, it's basically they're working at the speed of paper, and they really should be working at digital speed.
Yeah, it's like 1950. It's crazy.
Well, and in that market space, I'm sure it's costing them a lot of money too, having to go through that. You know, not getting
and the fact
to
that everything has to. Yeah, and the idea that everything has to stop because we've got to locate this form before we can release that particular batch to the customer who's clamoring for it. It's crazy.
Yep. So that brings us to, you know, kind of toward the end of things here. Few things that I like to always point out, and then I'll ask you, Steve, as well to kind of share your thoughts on this. But some of the recommendations that I've heard, some of the things that I've heard from the user community are things like, you know, it's essential to identify how content is arriving at your door. Is it electronic? Is it paper? Where's it coming from? What form is it taking? And then to assess how it can be brought into the process sooner. So this mantra of capture at first touch point. So in other words, if you're in a field office or remote location and you get this information there, that's really where you want to bring it into the process. Get it at the first touch point. The minute you touch something, the minute that information reaches your doorstep, capture it, recognize it, you know, identify it, get it into the system, get it into the process. And, of course, automate as much as you possibly can. The idea of streamlining the process and looking for things like consistency and accuracy. I mean, these are all things that are really essential to today's business operations. And the idea of eliminating the paper, that example that you just shared with us is a prime example of how paper can clog a business process and slow things down and cost money, you know, cost the organization money. So these are some of the things that I would, you know, say are really key. And for those of you who have joined us, sit back and think about it in your world. You know, how is the information coming? Is it electronic or paper? And what's the percentage of it? What's the balance of it? And can you actually capture this at the first touch point? Okay, and when you talk about things like exceptions, you know, how are you dealing with exceptions and exception process? And is there a way that you can turn these exceptions around and bring them into a standard process? So eliminate. You know, unfortunately, I hear a lot of people say the exception became the rule, and that's not really the way it should be. You know, we should have our standard processes and figure out how do we then bring some of this exception handling into a standard process or a standardized way that we're doing things. And so, Steve, you know, what are your thoughts on this? And I know that you also have a lot of information available for folks that are listening, but what are your thoughts along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, I think you raised good points, Bob. I think, you know, overall, I think what we're trying to impress upon the audience is that moving away from paper and towards an electronic document and letting software maximize the value of that document, maximize shareability, et cetera, is really a much more efficient way to go. There are savings in labor, in cost, and responsiveness and competitiveness. So, you know, if anyone does want more information and wants to speak further about this, my contact information is here. We also have great use cases on our website I wanted to point out. I want to invite people to follow us on Twitter, and there are a bunch of really good videos that we offer on our website, on our YouTube channel, that show software like this in action. So I
a lot of great resources.
to investigate that. Thank you.
Yep, a lot of great resources. You really do have a lot available for the folks that are out there. So thank you. And likewise, the AIM website. For those of you who are familiar with it, know that you can get a lot of research, industry research. Some of the statistics that I used today actually came from this year's Industry Watch report, and it's available to you at aim.org/research. And if you want to get a hold of me, Bob Larrivee, it's B.Larrivee at AIM, or you can follow me on Twitter as Bob Larrivee or in LinkedIn. I'm certainly out there as well. And it really is kind of fascinating when you Google yourself and you find out how much you are spread out there across the Internet and in the cyber world. But by all means, feel free to contact Steve or I. Definitely one more. Want to thank you again, and at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Teresa.
Thank you. We've been listening to Bob Larrivee of AIM, and before that, and with him, Steve Talmadge of C-Vision Technologies. And I do just want to pop back here one moment, just to remind you, download a copy of the slides. A PDF of that is available in that resource list. You can get the contact information in addition to these links. And I have to admit, this resource library of case studies that C-Vision has on their website, it is fantastic. There is a lot of dozens of really great case studies there to show the examples of how they are making this work well for their customer base. Highly encourage you to read them. There's a few of them we actually put the actual case study if you could just download right now, and that's also in the resource list. But there is that full case study library, and that's also linked in the resources list. So do want to mention that in October, AIM will be hosting a free one-day seminar about improving paper-driven processes. So if you're going to be in Washington, D.C., New York City, or Toronto, Ontario, on these days that are listed up here in October, suggest that you register and stop by that seminar. It is free to attend. It's just one day. So to get more information and to register, just go to aim.org/seminars. And we are at the end of our webinar today, and just a reminder that this has been recorded and it will be available in the next day or two at AIM.org's resources webinars page. So, come back, listen to it again, and invite your colleagues to come listen to it. As I mentioned, we have the wealth of great resources for you available in that resource list to the right of the slide area. And also, when this webinar is over, a brief survey is going to open up on your desktop. And I greatly value your feedback and would really like to hear from you. And so I appreciate if you would just take a few moments to answer the few questions in there. But you can also suggest future topics for us to cover. So I look forward to hearing from you there. Thanks again to our underwriter, C-Vision Technologies. Without support from our solution providers, AIM wouldn't be able to bring you these free educational programs like our webinars. I would also like to thank our panelists today, Bob Larrivee from AIM and Steve Talmadge from C-Vision. And as we do close the webinar, I just want to ask each of them for their closing thoughts or key takeaway. So I'm going to begin first with Steve. Your closing thoughts today.
Thanks, Teresa. I just wanted to remind people that moving from your existing process to automatically identifying documents, extracting information, validating it externally, it's not a difficult process to do. People are doing it every day, and they've been doing it for almost a decade now. So very quick ROI, return on investment, and it helps companies become much more competitive. Bob?
Yes, thanks, Steve. And I absolutely agree. One of the things that I've been saying for a long time now is look at the process, understand how it works, look at where you can optimize, where you can automate, wherever possible, whenever possible. And if you're dealing with paper, basically I look at it and say, how can we eliminate the paper from this process? Or at minimum, how can we get it into the process much quicker? And so I always like to say, begin with the process. Look at how things are running, look at where the information is coming from, and from that point, automate. It is doable, absolutely doable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for your time today. For AIM, this is Teresa Resick, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.